Hi, my name is Ken. I'm an alcoholic. Good to be here in Springfield, the home of honest government. I feel like I know you all from 60 Minutes and CNN Confidential and I mean, there are places that make things happen, you know. But here there are places that not only make things happen, they start them, you know, like, I want to thank Michael and Gary for picking Carol and I up at the airport. I mean, that was a treat in itself. And he's right. He pulled away today. He says, we're in a rush. And I didn't realize it was that much of a rush. I thought maybe you get a chance at least to get a shot at getting in, you know. And then he hits the brakes real hard, and I almost lost it anyway. I said, so we're going to sign him up for safe driving next year. This has been, and I want to thank Randy and all the folks on the committee. This has been really a nice, relaxing weekend for me and Carol, and the folks have been so nice. Randy took us over to the Capitol where it all happens. I met more lobbyists here than I met my whole life, you know, like it's... And I think they're practicing for 60 Minutes because they say, "Hi, my name is Joe, and I hope you're having a good time." But I'm real glad I got to listen to Don and James do a lot of the fifth step stuff and along with all the stuff in the big book, and that was very nice. I enjoyed it very much, and I got to spend some time with Dick and Peggy, which is great, and I'll hear Dick tonight and Peggy tomorrow, and I know that will be good. And, you know, the whole thing here is just amazing to me. How many of you have less than 90 days in the room? Good. There's a good number of you. You know, Don and James covered the big book very well, but there are some early promises that they didn't even touch on. And one of those is that people are going to start waving to you using all their fingers. You know, like, you know. And you're no longer going to be confused when you go to the bathroom as to whether to sit or stand. I mean, it's just, you know, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but it will come to you, you know, like, you know. And you'll actually get to the point when the police go by, you won't pull over, you know, like, and these are not extravagant promises. Family members will start letting you hold the children, even on hardwood floors. You know, like there's a lot of things that will start to happen to you. You'll be like a stimulus package that the government gives out because you're going to start having a lot of credit with a lot of people who didn't want to even know you before. You know, that's just the way it is. You know, I was in the hospitality room. You hear a lot of stuff from people. It's great. And I was hearing some of the romance stories, and you guys here are just like any place else, you know. Alcoholics by nature are romantics, you know. We love the whole process of romance, you know, right from the first casual glance, you know, right up to the restraining order, you know, like that's just who we are, you know. We're what they call the complete package, you know. And just after a while, when you're sober, which most people are going to notice, is you start to have a lot of fun with this, and you start to be able to laugh at a lot of things that didn't seem so funny before. We have a pizza place in San Diego, the Bronx Pizza, and they do a really good job with pizza. I mean, it's a little hole-in-the-wall place that you can't believe the amount of pizzas that they sell. And they have a website. And almost everybody who works there fits the website because their website says that all of their cooks have been trained at some of the finest penal institutions in the United States, you know? And then it says they've all taken advanced training at local 12-step programs, you know? And they're always hiring, except that they have a 2 tattoo minimum, like you have. And you go there and you get a pizza and you say, wow, these guys are actually working, That's the thing that I love about Alcoholics Anonymous. I love to see people like as Phoenix just come out of the dirt and you hear these great stories. Randy was telling us a little bit about how he started over there at the Capitol and what he gets to do today and the respect he had when he went down the hall and he said, can these folks come in and visit into some of the innermost parts of the Capitol? And people just said, sure, it's nice to have that kind of respect rather than people looking at you saying, are you kidding me? I mean, we had stores in the city when I was a kid we used to go into. They used to make us snap our fingers. That way you couldn't take anything. You had to snap your fingers from the time you walked in the store. It was just that kind of a deal. And I say this. I try to say this at every opportunity I get to speak. And hearing you guys laugh is really what I enjoy the most. I love to hear people laugh. I mean, I don't know. When somebody cries, I can't tell you what that does to me. It literally guts me from here to here. I mean, I hate to hear people cry. And I know it's necessary, because tears are to the soul what the thoughts are to the brain. It's something that's a cleansing process. But I like to hear people laugh because I know when you are laughing, a couple of things about laughter, and that is you cannot laugh and think at the same time. So every time you're laughing, whether you're from Bath or wherever, it doesn't make any difference, you're getting a respite from you, If you were to go down to what's the place in town, Randy's, is that it? Is Randy's Bar? Yeah, downtown here, and Max's and some of those places tonight, I'm sure there's people there having a great time, And I drank in those kinds of places. I drank in a place one time where the bartender, we never had mixed drinks. I never had mixed drinks. And the bartender ran the bar with just putting shots in glasses. And we had a guy at the end. We just called him Freddie. We never knew who he was, but he was always there at the end of the bar. And the bartender got a call just when he got to Freddie. And he turned around to answer the phone. And we all picked up our shot glasses and did what you do with a shot glass. We downed it and gave it that great, thanks, Scott, And Freddie's glass was empty, but he took it up and, And the bartender turned around and he said, you think I should charge him? He obviously got the effect, And that's the way it is. And the guys were talking today about the stories in the big book. I am not Jim. Jim is not my story. I am so remotely opposite of Jim. To take whiskey and put it in milk. I'm of the belief, and I still am of this belief today, that the only thing that should mix with whiskey is saliva. That absolutely nothing else should go near it. Why would you buy whiskey and dump it into milk? I mean, but I do identify with the jaywalker. Jaywalker's my kind of guy, He has this adrenaline rush all the time, and he's building himself into a career, each time he goes out, it's like pushing the envelope a little bit further. I don't know about you, but when I walked into a bar, it was like I could hear in my head a voice say, let the games commence, I knew it was going to be wild stuff, and guys would see it and say, Kenny D's here, the shit was going to hit the fan, and it would be like, wow, and I used to just go down and casually get started by just, getting a little shot. And the deal is that my brothers would sometime already be there, and they'd be ahead of the game. And I came from a family where we didn't know anything except how to drink, My mom would have a half a glass of beer when she had spaghetti. My dad would drink a keg of beer while she was making it, The deal is that it would just like be, wow, And the deal was is that we always knew what was going on in our house, and that was chaos, because we used to have a Borden's in Brooklyn at one time. This is going back in the 40s, but we used to have a Borden's milk truck with a horse on it. And my brother was coming home one night about 3, 4 in the morning when the milkman was delivering the milk. And this horse just kind of had a wagon to it and went down the street, and the milkman jumped out and put the milk in front of your house. And my brother thought that he was a jockey at Belmont or something. He took the horse and he brought it around and tried to put it in the garage, And my mother said, in the morning, she said, "You won't believe this, but there's a horse out by the garage." And my brother said, "Good." I thought he might have gotten away, that's the kind of stuff that goes on, We were real alcoholics, A real alcoholic is somebody who's going down the street and a cop pulls him over because he's driving erratic. And the cop goes over to him and the alcoholic will roll down the window and the cop will say, "You're drunk." And the alcoholic will say, "Thank God, I thought the steering had gone out." That's the kind of mind we have. We're always like two or three strokes behind the clock. The thing is going on and you're going, wow, And you always think things are happening that aren't happening. I got tossed out of a poker game one night because I was just being a nuisance, And I came down a flight of stairs and landed on a landing where one foot hit the landing and the other foot hit the step above it. And I kind of maintained my balance because I was much younger then and I actually had legs that could stand. And there was a cat there. And to this day, I swear that cat looked at me and said, "Nice landing," because he was like, "Whoa," And it made my night, because to get the respect of a cat you'd never see again, how many times do you get a shot at that? You're just like, hey, what's going on? You just don't know what's going to happen. But the bottom line is that that's just the way it is. When these guys were reading the book today and they were talking about Jung and they were talking about Silky, there's a lot of things that you get to see over a course of a lifetime in AA. And fortunately, I've had a chance to do this for a while. And what's nice about it is that each day you become aware of something that before you knew, but you weren't aware of. We are alcoholics. We have, and as human beings, we have a unique gift, and that is we're intellectual. We have a certain amount of intellectualism. And that intellectualism allows us to know something without experiencing it. And that's a wonderful thing. But in AA, we share our experience, strength, and hope. We don't try to share our intellect because the person we're talking to, he's out there where the buses don't run. Like Michael, when I almost fell out of Michael's a great example. His mother and dad are here tonight. Somewhere along the line, you're going to pick up wings. I mean, you guys you're destined for wings, But his big response to the whole deal was, "Oops." My leg is dragging on the ground, one leg's in the car's pulling away, and my buddy here looks at me and goes, "Whoops." I mean, how many oops are there till you get to, "Oh my God," But Carl Jung, our guy, the thing I always loved about him is that Carl Jung came to the realization that every human being has a soul. And that realization by Carl Jung saved Alcoholics Anonymous. Because when Roland went there and you heard Don and James talk about this, and he had some success there while he was there and then never even made it home. The deal was he had no place to go. There was no human power that was going to be able to help him. And here was a guy, Jung, at the top of his game, probably the most, outside of Freud, probably the most noteworthy psychiatrist in the world, who said, I can't help you. But there's a power that can. And you can be saved by that power. And the deal is he set the game up for what was to come next. You know, he had a deal that he introduced. He coined a lot of psychological phrases that are still used today. It was Jung who came up with introvert and extrovert. It was Jung who came up with the collective unconscious. It was Jung who came up with the archetype of a group. But he also came up with a word that I love, because sometimes when you talk about miracles and gods, newcomers get confused. You know, they get scared off. But he came up with a word, and that word was synchronicity. Synchronicity. When something very meaningful happens to you that is way beyond the realm of possibility. Way beyond the realm of possibility. He was asked on TV back in the 50s. He died in 61, but he was asked on TV in the 50s, do you believe in God? And he said, no, I don't believe in God. I know God. I know God through the experiences of my life. And if you're sitting here tonight, whether you're aware of it yet or not, you know God for the same thing. Something happened that allowed all of us to do something that individually we could never do before. Absolutely never do before. Synchronicity. Things coming together that you couldn't possibly imagine. I had some synchronicity a lot of times in my life before I got here, and I wasn't aware of it, and when I got here. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, my family and I were separated. My wife had taken my kids and moved out of state for her own sanity, you know, and I was living in the city and she was someplace else. And when we got back together after almost 2 years of being separated, we decided we couldn't stay where we were because we were walking around on eggshells to begin with after just getting back. But also the fact is that every time it seemed like things were going to be done, my kids would come home from school because some of the things I did at the end of my drinking made the newspaper. Kind of like local politicians here. And my kids would say, Dad, my teacher remembers, and they would play out the scenario. So we did a geographic. We got in the car, and 4 years sober, I moved to California from New York. And when I got to California, my sponsor, who was a great, great human being, he said to me, I want you to promise me that when you get to California, because we really didn't know where we were going, that you go to some church for at least 6 months because you're going to need the extra juice. You're going someplace you don't know anybody. You're going someplace you've never been before. You're going to be away from all the people who you know when you first got sober. So promise me you'll go to church. I said, okay. And he said, I don't care which one you go to, just go to one. So when I got to, we decided we'd go into Southern California and start there and kind of visit and then go up the state to Northern California to see where we could live. Unemployment was running high in California then. That was in July of 74. The Watergate thing was going on, and Nixon left the White House in August of 74. So California unemployment was rampant, and there was a lot of uncertainty. And here we were as a family going across the country. And when we got there, there was a Catholic church. I was raised Catholic, so that's the church I went to. And that church was St. Martin's on El Cajon Boulevard in La Mesa, California. And I went in and I went to church. And afterward, my family and I went over to the rec hall where they had coffee and donuts. And this priest walked up to me and he said, are you going to be living in the parish? And I said, I don't know, Father. We haven't made that decision yet. A lot of things have to happen. He said, are you looking to buy or rent? I said, I'm looking to rent because we couldn't afford to buy anything. And he says, well, first let me introduce myself to you. My name is Bill Wilson. I said, excuse me? He said, my name is Bill Wilson, Father Bill Wilson. He said, and I know what it is to come a distance. I've come from Ireland. And I said, oh. So my sponsor said that I would intuitively know where I was to be, you know. And I said, oh, wow. I said, that's good. And he says, just call me Bill. I said, okay. So he said, come on over to the rectory and I'll give you the name of a parishioner who can help you find a place to rent. So I went over and he hands me a card. And the card was Bob Smith Realty. So I had come 3,000 miles and met Bill Wilson and Bob Smith. Synchronicity. You wouldn't want to lay money on that in Vegas, you know. There are some bets they just don't take, you know. And the deal is that had happened to me when I first got sober, because this was 4 years into my sobriety. When I first got sober, I had some trouble with the law. It seemed that when I was drinking, I found things before people officially lost them. And I had to appear before this assistant district attorney. Now, Brooklyn is in Kings County in New York, and Kings County at that time had about 250 to 300 assistant district attorneys. It was a city of 8 million people, 7.5, 8 million people, a borough of New York. And I went in, and the guy behind the desk was a guy who I was going to meetings with. And he had a Cadillac, which in the 70s was a big status symbol. And I said to him, I'd like you to be my sponsor instead of this crazy man that I have. And he said, no, I've only been here a little bit ahead of you, so you stick with him. But when I went in, he looked down at the paper and he looked at me and he said, I didn't know you did this, Ken. And I said, well, I sure as hell didn't know you did this when we were riding around sharing, you know, like, you know. So he said, I'm going to get the detective in here who's handling this, and maybe we can do something. So he called the detective in. The detective was a kid, or a man, that I had played high school football and basketball with. And he said, Kenny D, he said, if you want me to, I'll bend backwards to help you with this thing if you own up to it. But if you don't want to own up to it and you want to fight it, he said, I'm going to turn it over to someone else because I don't want to take you down. And so we sat there, an attorney and a policeman and me, and we worked out a deal. It was all financial, that I would make these payments for the next 22 years. And I made those payments for 22 years. So I saw the wreckage of my past every month, particularly when times were really lean. But the deal was synchronicity. Something was working in my life that I could not explain to anybody else. But inside, I had a total awareness of what was going on. I couldn't tell anybody else because it would have sounded too far-fetched. Some of the stories I had told in the past were pretty far-fetched, you know. I was a blackout drinker, you know. So even when I was first sober, the things I remembered most vividly never happened, you know, like, so I would just say, oh yeah, that happened to me too, and I had no idea. I mean, I froze to death in one story, and another story, you know, I ran away from home at 2 or something. I mean, like, I had no sense of reality, you know, I had no idea what reality was. I could do drive-bys, you know, but I didn't know what it was to take up permanent residence. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is about. It's taking up permanent residence. But that's this synchronicity. And that's what reality is very, very important. You know, and that's why we have a chapter in the book called A Vision for You. It's not a dream for you, because in a dream, you get to work on reality. You can fly, you can do whatever you want when you're dreaming. But in a vision, reality gets to work on you. And it chips away at all the nonsense that you've accumulated. all the BS that you've carried around with you. And the deal is that as you go along, you get to be more and more comfortable with yourself. I had, as I said, a great sponsor. He was an entertaining kind of guy. He had a twitch. And he was a fighter, in his early days, and he had a twitch. And he smoked terrible cigars, terrible, terrible cigars. And he had a head that looked like it had already worn out 2 bodies. And when you talked to him, he'd twitch like this. He would be looking at you, but from askance, like you were trying to throw a jab or something at him, like. His body and his head were never facing you at the same time, I worked with him so long I had a twitch, it got to be, I was twitching. And whenever I questioned him about anything, I don't care how mild the question was, he'd look at me and he'd go, if you want what I have, And I did. I did. He had what I wanted, And the deal was that he was part of my synchronicity too, because he was a guy who knew exactly what I needed. If I was to be left alone, I would have fallen right through the cracks. He had me over his house every night. And I'd eat dinner there, and then we'd go to a meeting. And that was in the time when you went to meetings all the time. I can honestly say I never heard 90 meetings in 90 days. We did 90 meetings probably in 90 days, but no one ever talked about it. It was just assumed if you wanted what your sponsor had, you were going to do what they were doing. And that's what they were doing. They weren't asking me to do something they weren't doing. And he was so practical. He could see right through all my menage, And I remember I was living with my mom when I first got sober in a senior citizen place. And I had been there so long, I was like mastering the walker. I was like getting around on the walker pretty good. And then my mom got a notice and it said I had to move out. I wasn't a senior citizen, And when I went, I got a place on my own. It was it was like, hot and cold running junkies in the hallway. And he came over to visit me. And the only thing I had from my marriage left, possession-wise, that was worth anything, was a Hummel. My mother had given my wife and I a Hummel when we got married, and I had that Hummel, and I had it on an orange crate in the living room. And when he came in, he went to I had no chairs or seats or anything. So he said he brought me a hot plate so I could make coffee, and he went to sit down, and I said, whoa, 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 whoa. I said, be careful. He said, why? I said, that Hummel is sitting right there. And so he picked it up and looked at it, and he said, is this what's worrying you? And I said, yeah. So he threw it. And it hit the wall and splattered all over the wall. He said, now sit down. You don't have to worry about shit. He said, you don't own anything. If somebody breaks in now, they'll leave something, I had very mixed feelings about that, and I tried to question him, but I pretty much knew the answer before I asked the question. And to show you how this guy operated was when I was 25 years sober, there was a knock at my door, and I was out on the West Coast, and he was still in New York, and I went to the door, and it was FedEx, and they said, we have a package for you. And I opened the package, and inside was a Hummel that had been broken. The head was in the back, the thing. There was and he sent a little card. Congratulations, Good things come for those who wait, That's the kind of guy I had, He kept me grounded, He kept me grounded. And, They were talking about Bill and how he wasn't having any success. And the reason Bill didn't have any success, as I see it today, is because he was talking about spiritual answers. And he was not a good salesman. People say he was a good salesman. He wasn't a good salesman because he was giving people a solution to a problem they didn't know they had. And it wasn't until Bill listened to Silky about, you've got to talk about the problem first. You got to tell people what's causing this problem. And then when it's hopeless, then you're the Calvary, you come in and give them the answer. But otherwise, you're giving them an answer to a problem they don't think they have. And the minute that Bill started to do that, things changed considerably. And thank God for us, that's the way it's done today. And that's why we have, the doctor's opinion right up front. And Silky, and they were talking about that. He talks about us being in full flight from reality, outright mental defectives, children of chaos, creators of confusion, even in our best moments, and this is all on your resume. This is who you are, you go to somebody, I got some skills here, I'm a creator of confusion, I'm an outright mental defective. I'm in full flight. Some people are only in partial flight. I'm in full flight from reality, I wouldn't know reality if it mugged me, And that's just the way life is. And then he took me, I always feel remiss if I don't say, he took me on my first 12-step call. And he said, we got a 12-step call. We got to go save this guy. I said, okay, let's go. I didn't even know what a 12-step call was. I was like 3 weeks sober. I said, okay, let's go. So we get in the car and we go. And he says, I want you to go in and get this guy. We couldn't find a parking space. So he said, can you go in and get this guy? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm an alcoholic. I'm not mentally retarded. I can go ring a bell and get a guy to come to the door. That's not that difficult. So he says, okay, and he was all charged up. He was twitching so much. I think his head was more in the back seat than it was in the front seat, I thought he was trying to pick something up behind the seat, but he was excited. I thought, don't hit the mirror, you won't even see, And so I get out of the car. And as I said, by now, I had a little bit of a twitch myself and I went to get the guy, and as he tells the story, he went around the block, and when he pulled back up, I have the guy on the ground, and I'm beating him with a garbage can lid. Somewhere between the guy making the call and me getting there, he had what's called a second thought. Which I have come to find out he was entitled to. I didn't know that. So there I have him on the ground, and I got this lid, and I didn't beat him to death. I hit him maybe 4, 5, 6 times tops. And after the third time, he had that look like, I'm willing to turn my wife and my will over to you. Just don't hit me again. And his wife was behind a screen door. It was like in August, and she's screaming, and I'm thinking, you better not come out here, And he whistles me to the car. And when we get in the car, I have seen that head move before. But now it was like The Exorcist. It was the only thing he wasn't doing is throwing vanilla extract at me, it was spinning around and around, and he said, I want you to do me 2 favors. I said, sure, what's that? He said, first of all, don't ever consider that a 12-step call. And then he says, the second thing is, don't tell anybody I'm your sponsor for a while, Let's see how it goes, And to this day, when I go back home, you'd be surprised. I got to listen to 8 guys at least tell me that story. Hey, D, remember that time, Alcoholics can't remember to pay the bills. They can't remember, but you screw up. It's like in the book of life, and that was the way I got started. And you know what? It was just the right thing for me. Alcoholics Anonymous was very simple when I got here. It was the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 and 12. That's what people did. And they talked about growing spiritually. Jung and those guys, like Jung, talked about growing spiritually. I started reading Emmett Fox. They had you read stuff that ordinarily you wouldn't pick up, and you'd start to read it. And William James, A Variety of Religious Experience. As some of you have tried to read it, I think it's the toughest book I ever tried to read as far as spirituality. I have never seen another book like it. I thought he was on blotter acid. I'm reading this book going, I was reading it starting to twitch, I thought I understood some of the language, and it didn't seem like, he was like making eggs, but it was coming out, spaghetti, And the one thing he did say in there, though, that really struck my fancy was he said, there is an unseen world. And to the degree that you can accept that unseen world and dedicate your life to it, to that degree you will live happy, joyous, and free. And that's the deal here. I hear people say, I want to explain God. I can't even explain a thermos. I put stuff in there and it's cold. I put stuff in there and it's hot. How does it know? So all of a sudden now I'm going to understand God, And if I was able to understand God, then he'd be too small to help me. If I could understand him, he just wouldn't be of any value to me because, that's just not the way it is. And God has a great thing. We learn by our experience here. We learn from other people's experience and we learn from our experience. But that's how we grow. There's a word that's used a lot today. That the word is crisis. People are in crisis, And I'm going to tell you something that I hope you hear it, and that is a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. When you're in the middle of a crisis, that's a great learning experience. The Chinese have written symbols, and they have two symbols for the word crisis. The first is danger, and the second is opportunity. And the deal is if you focus on the danger, you miss the opportunity. There's an opportunity in every crisis. I don't care what it is. I've been around guys that have been going through some unbelievable stuff, and at some point they just say, you know what? Instead of trying to figure this out, I'm just going to go about doing what I need to do today and see what happens. And what is supposed to happen, happens. If you guys want some technical skills to work with newcomers, I can give you technical stuff. Like when an alcoholic isn't too sure of what's going on, have him take his finger and put it in ice water and stir it. And then have him pull it out suddenly. And what will happen is you'll see the water go right back the way it should be. That's the impact we have on life. I have things like snow scenes. Shake a snow scene for a newcomer. Okay, let's put it down. Let's watch it. The snow settles down. You say, that's the way it's supposed to be. This is the real heavy stuff, You get any deeper than this, you're not going to be working with newcomers. You're going to be working with psychotics, And the deal is that's all it is that it's about just accepting the way life is and then moving forward with it. And that's all this book is teaching me how to do. It's teaching me how to live in this moment and do whatever needs to be done in this moment and not get caught up in all the other stuff. And you hear guys come and say, Ken, so-and-so doesn't practice the principles and all his affairs. And it's like Squealer's Week, It's like, what do you think? What do you think this is, a federal witness program? And they squeal on you, he's not doing it. And the guy said to me not too long ago, Ken, so-and-so bought a Rolex. He said, a $25,000 Rolex. Now, this is a guy who has trouble staying sober. Now, I'm not saying everybody has a $25,000 Rolex, because the lobbyist, I guess every other one has 25. But I'm not saying it's all illegal. I'm sure some of it is very well earned. But this guy happens to be in the gray area, but he can't stay sober. So this guy said, I don't understand how he gets a Rolex. And I said, you're missing the point. He has the Rolex, but you got the time. You got the time. It doesn't care who has the watch. Watches come and go. You got the time. And the deal is that when you start to appreciate that each day that you have here is a day where you could have missed whatever happened in that day. You could have just missed it. I mean, we did so many fun things. I was part of so many fun conversations this weekend. I love being around alcoholics because we're the only group that are collectively insane and growing spiritually. Yeah, I could do that if God wants me to. And the deal is that we just never know what's going to happen. Life does not deliver to us all the time the way we think things should come to us. It's just not going to happen. We came out here on a plane, and they're so intent at the airport anymore. I mean, it's just amazing. And Carol had her purse taken away, and they looked into it. And the thing they were concerned about was it was a 4-hour trip, so we bought 2 huge Snicker bars. TSA said, well, we don't know what those things are. Would you? So Carol says, what do they think they are? Sawed-off shotguns or what? So I'm laughing at her because she's in front of me, and I'm like, because I know she handles that well. And I'm waiting to see the price they pay for going into her purse. I wasn't worried about her. Oh my, I guess I'll have to call Randy and say, a funny thing happened on the way to Springfield, So after she goes through, I'm through, and the guy looks at me and he says, sir, don't you know we're on high alert? Geez, nobody told me. He said, we are constantly reminding you to take your laptop out of your valise. And I said, okay. And he says, well, I said, I don't have a laptop. So he says, oh, never mind, it's the next guy. But this is the drivel you have all day long, And you say to yourself, I constantly remind myself we're in the middle of a tsunami of bullshit because we have so much nonsense every day. The last time I was at the airport, there was a guy there, and I have nothing. This is not a heavy-set joke. This is just the reality. There was a woman who was in front of me, 2 people in front of me, and then a very heavy-set guy. Had to be at least 320, 340 pounds, 50 pounds. Huge guy. And this woman who weighed about 100 pounds, her luggage weighed 52 pounds. They charged her $100. This guy gets up there, his luggage weighs 48. She says, okay. I'm next. I notice this stuff. I am sober and I am aware and I notice this stuff, So when I got up, I said, isn't that funny? What? I said that lady is about 152 pounds and she paid $100. That guy is close to 400 pounds. He's okay. She says, do you want to file a complaint? I said, no, I'm just making an observation. Don't you find that interesting, and that's when I find out that what alcoholics find interesting, a lot very dramatic, you know. And all you do is listen to people, and you realize if you listen to them with the idea that it's not as serious as they think, most of the time, you can have some jokes. Guy told me, he said, I think my wife is bisexual. I said, all wives are bisexual. He said, they are? I said, yeah, if you don't buy them something, you don't get any sex, you know. And somehow I enjoyed it, you know. But that's the deal, life is too short to take as serious as some people want to take it. It's, we're sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. Just watch the news any day of the week and say, is there anybody on there that I think has a better life than me? And most of the time you're going to say no. I mean, I don't know how you can watch the news, because if they're making too much money, something's really going bad. If they're not making enough money, something's going bad, Sometimes we have to remind ourselves that we came into this world with nothing, and we still have most of it. And we don't need to get caught up with nonsense. And when I work with new guys, I love working with new guys, because no matter how they look, that's not who they are. That's no matter how they look, that's not who they are. That's who they are in that moment, but that's not who they are. They used to tell the story of the guy with no arms and no legs, and he showed up at the house of ill repute. And the madam looked at him, and she said, just what do you think you're going to do here? And he said, I rang the bell, didn't I? And that's the deal. You could be dealing with a bell ringer, regardless of how they look, they could be a bell ringer, You don't want to discount anybody. I have never, to my knowledge, said, I don't think they're going to make it. I have never said that. I have said, I think they're going to have an interesting time. But I never said, because I have no idea. Through each and every one of us, God is trying to become something he's never been before. And our simple job is not to impede him, to allow him to become that. And if I have a connection to do something else, I am short-circuiting God's power to use me in the way that he wants to use me. AA has taught me to grow wherever I'm planted. Wherever I'm planted, that's where I'm supposed to grow. I'm not supposed to get caught up in all this other nonsense. I read a book a long time ago by C.S. Lewis, and it was called The Screwtape Letters. And in it talks about the fact where the devil, this guy Screwtape, is training his nephew to be a devil. And C.S. Lewis wrote the book. And C.S. Lewis was a guy who converted to Christianity later in life. He was an atheist and then an agnostic and then finally a believer. But the thing is in there he talked about the fact that hell was made up of noise, because the devil knew that noise was a distraction that would keep us from realizing that God was there. It was a distraction. And I look at the world I live in today, it's a techno-barbaric world. I mean, we got Twitter, where do people get that? Be still and know that I am God. How do you be still when the guy next to you, hey, did that order come in? And the deal is that there's a lot of noise, and the noise keeps us. Bill talks about it in front of the Winchester Cathedral. I wanted and needed God, and he came, and I had that experience. But he was soon blotted out by worldly clamors, most of which were within me. how many times do we miss the opportunity to get that glimpse of God that we could get that would sustain us and give us the ability to do other things because we're too busy making an agenda of minutia, you know? We're milking the mouse, you know? Keeping busy. I'm a very busy person. You know, look at my card. I have a company. I have a home phone. I have a cell phone. I have an email. I have a fax. I'm a somebody, you know? Be still and know that I am God. I have that as a bookmarker in my daily planner to remind me to read that every day. You know where that comes from? It's a Psalm, 46:10. 46:10. If you count the letters in Be Still and Know That I Am God, there's 24 letters, the 12 steps and the 12 traditions. If you add up the numbers, 4, 6, and 1, it's the 11th step, conscious contact. I don't have a conscious contact when I'm operating totally unconscious. I don't have a conscious contact when I'm totally unconscious. So what do I do? I have to allow time in my day just to be still. I don't care how you schedule it, but just to be still. And know that God will let me know what I'm to do if I give him a chance. He doesn't get a chance if all my day is preoccupied. And have fun in the day. No matter what's going on, have fun. Some guy said the other day something about, I want to be number one, and this is what we're going to do. And I said, okay. And he said, you don't have trouble being number one? I said, no. I said, I played number two a couple of times. Somebody has the idea that if you're not the lead dog, the view is always the same. It's like, sometimes you just have to let life happen and happen to you. And that's what I got out of you guys and what you were talking about in the steps. That's what Silky was saying. That's what Jung is saying. That's what William James is saying. That's what turned Bill Wilson's life around. Bill Wilson did not want to be who he was. None of us want to be who we are. We know God must have made some kind of a mistake, Boss, I'm working with you, but not full time. I got to have some time for me. And the deal is that you just realize that it's not about our trivial stuff at all. It's not about our trivial stuff at all. And when I come to these things like tonight, I can't tell you what a great time I've had since I got here. I got to sit with some people and talk to them and mostly listen to them. And listen to the people and what they're going through. And that's like that all over the United States. It's like that all over the United States. There was right now there's like a big thing in religion. This is the right religion. This is the wrong religion. This is... And I saw a cartoon in the paper the other day, and I said, oh, this is perfect. And the cartoon was two entrances to heaven. And the one entrance had above it the right religion. And it was all backed up. The other entrance had nobody in front of it, and it said the wrong religion. And there were two angels. And the one angel says to the other angel, I don't think they get it. I just don't think they get it. And that's the deal. It's God is in such hot pursuit of each and every one of us that none of us will escape. Do you think that the master of the universe would make up a game that he could lose to someone like us? Come on. I mean, that would be embarrassing. So Lord, who got the best of you? That bastard from La Mesa, Come on. That doesn't happen. So the deal is he's going to win. And all we have to do is just relax and let it happen. Just let it happen. When I was a big tycoon of industry, I used to have my shoes shined every day going into this building. And the guy who shined my shoes would snap the rag and he'd say, make it happen, Captain. Make it happen. And you know what? I got caught up in that crap, trying to make it happen. And I was in New York when Malcolm X was talking, and I remember going to hear Malcolm X talking, and one day he said, it's not about what people call you, it's what you answer to. And I thought, wow, that's pretty profound, I know I'm going to be okay in AA. I knew that right away. I knew it right away, that something was happening in my life that I couldn't explain, but it was okay. And it was okay because I didn't have any more solutions. I was tapped out. So whatever was going to happen was going to happen. And once I let go, once I truly surrendered and let go, then it could happen. It couldn't happen as long as I had one more good idea, because it was like, oh, God, you think he'd give up it now? I made the jaywalker look like he was pretty cool. I would be right in the middle of a bad idea, and it would be my synapse would overtake it with a worse idea, And then I'd try to do both of them, and it was a deal where I just didn't have any concept of what was going on. But as long as I was moving, I felt I was doing. As long as I was thinking, I felt I was doing. And now I realize that I was just totally lost in the oblivion of myself. And what happened in Alcoholics Anonymous is my sponsor took me through the steps, just the way they are in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And as we went through those steps, I got evicted from my hiding places. And when I got evicted from my hiding places, I no longer had the ability to tell myself it was this way when I could see really obvious it was the other way. It's like the alcoholic who says, is that a mirage or am I just seeing things? So we have a mind in Alcoholics Anonymous that we trap ourselves. And we trap ourselves to the point that we're so inhibited we don't get a chance to see what God really has in store for us. And the deal is that after a while, you just get in touch with everything here. I now know that cats say nice landing. I know that dogs like me. I used to think dogs didn't like me because they were always biting me, and then I had to come to the reality I was trying to get into places they were getting paid to keep me out of, And I remember this time I looked in my rearview mirror and I was driving through San Diego, and this dog, this Rottweiler, which is like a Doberman on steroids, was chasing after me. And I pulled over to the side, and I rolled down the window, and I let that dog come up alongside of me. And he was and I said, take it easy. And I looked him right in the eye, and that dog looked me right in the eye. And just for that moment, me and that dog were on the same wavelength. That dog knew that I had chased after a lot of crap in my life, having no idea what I was going to do with it when I caught it. But he also knew that I knew that about him. So I let him catch his breath. I said, just take it easy. I said, and hang in there, maybe you'll catch a Volkswagen, And I pulled away slow so he wouldn't get hurt, We had a guy who passed away in our area, and this guy used to get up to the podium, and he would say, I come here because I'm trying to stay sober. And when people would talk about nonsense, he would get up. He was the guy who was so simple, he would off-check all the nonsense that you'd hear for 40 minutes. And one day they were talking about making decisions. And people, alcoholics making a decision, it's like watching a chihuahua trying to pass a peach pit. It's like a facial motion and all that stuff, And Lewis got up there and he reached in his pocket and he pulled out a silver dollar and he says, when I have a decision to make, I flip this. Heads, I do it this way. Tails, I do it that way. I'm 35 years sober. I can live with it either way. And that's the ability of Alcoholics Anonymous for me, is being able to live with it regardless of how it goes. Being able to enjoy it regardless of how it goes. Not worrying about nonsense. Not massaging, things that you can't change, There's a crude saying in New York, but I love it. And it says, you cannot shine shit. It just won't take a buff, You can deodorize it and you can package it, but it's a wasted rag trying to buff it up, like you're... And I watch people try to do that over and over and over. And the reason I can identify with it, because in my life I tried to do it too. There were certain things I just didn't want to let go of. So I had the idea that it could be done a little bit differently, quicker, slower, smarter, whatever, and it would come out differently. And that's just not the way it is. I'm really glad that you guys invited me to come here this weekend. I've had a great time, and I really love you guys. You don't know how much I love you. I really do. Because every time in my life that I needed something, I turned around and I saw a mob that looked just like you. It just looked just like you. When my son passed away years ago, I remember people used to say about the single footprints in the sand, and it's supposed to be there's only one set of footprints because that's when God's carrying you. That was not my experience. My experience was I saw thousands of footprints. People came out of the woods and helped and did what they could. And then when my pension went away, people came and said, so you're going to have to go back to work like you never worked a day in your life. And my sponsor said, I think it's a challenge, Sure do miss him. Well, here, you can be... Maybe that's just what I needed at that time. I don't know. And then over the course of my life, when things have happened, when I went in I was just sharing with Fred that when I went in and had my bypass surgery, the doctor came in after the surgery and he said, "Is your mother alive?" And I said, "Oh no, she's dead a long time." And he said, "How about your dad?" I said, "No." And then I said, "Why?" And he said, "I would like to meet him." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "You got the most unbelievable family I've ever seen." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because only family members can come in here to visit you. And you have black, brown, yellow, green, He says, "You got guys who can't even speak English. He says, "And I won't even go into your sisters. Your brothers are interesting enough." But you end up having fun experience. My buddy Fred, who I sponsor, is up here from Taylorville. And we were just talking before the meeting that, in fact, I think Dick taped the meeting. In 1991 or 92, we were going to Quincy, and he was driving me. And the topic for the meeting, the theme of the convention was rigorous honesty. And we were tooling down the road, and Fred was telling me, I'd never had a Cadillac before. He just bought a Cadillac, was only a couple of months old, and we're tooling along, and make a long story short, a deer runs out. And Fred hits this deer. And we call the state police to report it because it's a lot of damage to his new car. And I'm sounding like my sponsor now. And if it was my car, I'd be crying. But it was really funny. It was his car, And he's going around to see if anything's leaking. And the highway patrolman comes. And, I work and have fun with and play with alcoholics all the time. So the guy is going down a checklist, and neither one of us had our seatbelts on. And the highway patrolman said, "Did you have your seatbelts on?" I started giggling to myself, I went around the other side of the car, actually, because I knew what I was going to hear. But Fred outdid himself, He said, what I knew he was going to say is, he said, "Yes. And thank God we did." That's really how it works, We got some credits for going to the convention and maybe a little problem credit right there. But I am so glad, as I started to say, that you guys invited me to come here tonight. I've had a really great time, and when I leave here now, and when I leave anywhere, what I say to myself, and it's only for me, and that is, speak only the word, Lord, and my soul shall be healed. And that's really what I live for today, to live with a solid soul to the best of my ability, knowing full well that there's no permanence in anything here. It's all impermanent. And as the days go on, things will change, and sometimes more rapidly than others. And things will change with people I love, and I'll change. And the bottom line is that it will always be growing to hopefully be a better person. And so our job here is really very simple. It's to take really good care of one another, because we're only on loan. And you'll never have this group of people in this room again. It just will never happen. By next year, this whole group will be changed in many different ways. That doesn't mean that they'll be drinking, but there'll be different reasons that they won't be here. So enjoy this night, because it's our night. And I hope and pray for each and every one of you that you find that power which is greater than yourself. And I hope you read over and over again in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. God bless you.